Are you guys okay with me recording this and I'll post it someplace it'll be available to the public? Anybody got a
Sure.
problem, please say so. Okay. Oh, here we are. Whoopee, whoopee, whoopee. How both of y'all made it to the conference?
Yeah.
How did you like it? I'd like to hear some feedback on that. Pluses and minuses.
I think considering, that all of it was online and that was a kind of a quick turnaround. I think it flowed well. I like knowing that they're all recorded, and maybe the in-person ones are too. But it was nice to be able to listen and knowing that they were recorded, because I always feel frantic writing down notes and trying to remember everything. So it gave me an opportunity to actually listen, knowing that I could kind of go back and have them.
Have y'all gotten the recording list?
Mm-hmm. I got it yesterday, I think.
Good. What about you, Kayla?
So complete transparency, I was so nervous about presenting my stuff. I was so wrapped up in self that I did not get to enjoy a lot of the stuff that I think that I normally would have, because it was my first time, and I was also, still working. So and so I don't think I got to, but I did walk away with some nuggets of information, just like light bulb moments for me, specifically in like the pitfalls panel, having to do with like what you said about and I don't know why this is stuck with me so profoundly, but like you said, with the family involvement thing, you said you don't just get to quit if it's too hard, right? Like, and that is our biggest pitfall at the moment at APG Las Vegas, is family involvement. And I've really let it go because it's just too hard, right? And so I walked away from that feeling like, okay, like now it's time to regroup, and that's my goal over this next year, is to get more, way more family involvement. So.
Okay. Have you had a chance? There were things I loved about this versus an in-person thing. One, I didn't have to travel. I didn't have to take the time out to travel. I didn't have to spend the money on the, although Airbnb still owes me a refund. I have spent money, but I didn't mean to. It wasn't supposed to. I didn't have to, I didn't have to lose the time moving from one place to another, all of that kind of. So it was different than what I was used to, but there were some real pluses. I also made the mistake of going ahead and working through the thing. But to catch it, go ahead. But to, But to make up for that, I have the list of presentations I can go back to anytime, and pick up on it. And as much as I like to interact in a presentation, it's not absolutely essential for me to have some light bulb moments like what you were saying, Caleb. I do that with recorded presentations all the time. And I'm learning so much about the tech. If I, as I'm listening to one of those recorded presentations, if I have a light bulb moment and I want to expand on it, there's nothing that keeps me from calling that person on the phone or emailing them or doing a Zoom call with them, and picking their brain out. And I find that most people in this field are really, really, well, very few of us, if any, got into it to make money. That isn't what it's about. It's about helping people. So most people are very available and, really, really ready to help any way they can. Most are. Some are so busy, they're hard. But in general, so there were some things I really, really liked about it. One of the mistakes I hear over and over again is folks saying because I wasn't out of town, my boss or I, as my boss, kept myself on the job. Instead of, had I been out of town, there'd only been so many things I could do. Next time I do one, I'm going to set my limits just as if I'm out of town, you know. Although, again, and I'm thinking out loud here, although, again, since it's all being recorded, I don't know.
Mhm.
Maybe I don't have to, you know. Maybe I don't have to. I don't know. But it's really interesting. Did y'all have a chance to go to any of the chat rooms, or not? And I don't mean the chat room on the presentations, but to the lounges or anything like that, and just tie in with.
Mm-mm.
I was in a couple of lounges. I did a couple of hours of volunteer time in 2 or 3 of the lounge things. It was pretty cool. People would drop in, you get to know them, you talk to them some. You know, I know a lot of folks weren't aware that you could do that, and not used to doing that kind of thing. But actually, the more we do that, the more aware and used to people will get to that. And I think it'll become a bigger part of things on setting up appointments. I mean, setting up relationships and contacts and things like that. They had meetings too. Did y'all go to any of the meetings? I didn't go to any of the meetings. They had meetings, and some of them had 30 people in them, you know, especially the ARHE. Next year, you guys, next year, we didn't have time to get this out. You got an email from me, but it was too late to do it very much with it. But what we ought to do next year in our APGs is all year long, as we're moving towards next year's national conference, we need to talk to our families and the young people about, you're invited.
Right.
You're invited to the conference, and we can build different workshops and things for different elements. We could have had a whole you know, line of workshops that were specifically for the younger group. We could have had a line for older group. We could have had a line for the others, the over the hillers. We could have had a line for families. We could have a line for parents. You know what I mean? We could have had a curriculum for those. Or we could have just.
That's a very good idea. And Caitlin, kind of going back to a way to involve families, if they knew that was coming, just, it's almost like a different adult or a different authority figure telling families how important it is what they're doing.
Yeah, to back them up. I noticed, in fact, one of the things I was going to do today, depending on, you know, unpacking some of this stuff from the conference, and anybody who watches this recording, we'd love to have an email or a call or something of anything that you might find would be helpful. We'd like to hear more about the conference. I may unpack this again next week or the week after to get, you know, some other perspectives. But if depending on how long we went on with this, one of the things I wanted to talk about today was a case study. Because Caitlin, you said you were having trouble with families. We always have trouble with family involvement, always. All right. And we'll talk about that in a second. But going back to the conference, it's one thing, one of the problems we have with families is these families, even if you have a strong family group, they go in and it's moms and dads talking to them, which are very important, but they're not the only important thing. Okay. In educational theory, we know that people learn differently. They learn differently, and they have to have a variety of things coming to them. Some of them they learn a lot from, some they learn, you know, some people learn by reading, some people learn by listening, some people learn by talking, some people learn by seeing videos, you know, those kind of things. Well, families are the same way. Parents are the same way. It's one thing, some of them, you'll hear them say things like, well, yeah, when I went into XYZ's counselor, he, you know, I knew that guy knew what he was talking about. I was ready to listen and do what he said. Well, that's good. For that parent, it was the magic educational path that happened with that guy. You'll have other parents say, I read your book, it really helped me. or I read somebody's book and it really helped me. For that parent, it's the reading is the magic path to get them, involved. Then you'll have parents say, I really wasn't getting it, and they met with the same counselor that the other guy said, I knew he knew what he was talking about. They read the book, whatever it was, but then they'll say, but man, when I got in that parent meeting and I heard Mary Jo talk, I knew Mary Jo knew where I was coming from, and I understood it, okay? Then you'll have those folks who'll go, yeah, I was online, and there was this YouTube I saw, and that did it. So we know that there's this big variety of learning processes and moments and everything else. Some parents need to be in that situation where they feel like there is an authority, somebody who really knows their stuff that's telling them things, all right? One thing that in the past that we set up was something called the Adult Information Series or the Family Information. You had different names. And what it would be, it was like every new parent who came in the program was told you need to go to these 6 meetings, these 6 presentations. And in those 6 presentations, we had an attorney talk about the legal aspects of substance use disorder and recovery. We had a doctor talk about the physical below the neck. We had a psychiatrist talk about the physical, a neurologist talk about the physical above the neck. We had a young person who told their story. We had a family member who told our family panel. Usually there's a panel of young people and panel. What I'm saying to you is we structured these things for every family member to go through. And the reason why we picked all the different elements is because different people need to hear different things at different times. So as you guys are approaching trying to get family involved and keep them involved, these are some tricks that you might think about doing. They're really simple to do. It's not a big deal. They're not expensive. If you've got a place to meet, and we do because of Zoom, it's just a matter of assigning a night and assigning a person to do each night, and bang, you do 6 of them or 5 of them or 4, whatever you can do, and you've got the Family Information Series in place, and it does help. Families are different now than they were back in the 70s and 80s. They're a lot different. About 95%, it seems to me, I don't have a hard research on it, it seems to be about 95% of the families that I deal with are substance involved themselves, one way or another. And usually to the point that probably they have broken their neurotransmitter regulation system. They actually are at some level in the disease. It's not hard to do when you're mixing medications with alcohol and THC. You do that, your neurotransmitter system is a mark that's going to get hit pretty easy and pretty fast, even if you are over 25. But rarely do I hear families who tell me the parents didn't start until after 25. Almost all of them, it's just in their progression, they just haven't hit the horrible stuff yet. As you get to know them, then you find out, oh yeah, there was a DUI, or I lost a job, this is my 4th marriage, blah blah blah, that kind of thing. Anyhow, so in the case study I was talking about today, I have a family member. I get a call this morning, and I want to hear y'all's equivalent, so be thinking about which one you're going to talk about in a second, okay? But I get a call this morning, and this mother has never come in for an actual full-blown session. She has called a couple of times asking me what I think. And I told her, I told her just in general, about the disease, et cetera, and started moving her towards filling out the paperwork, all of those kinds of things. So she follows through with some of the things, and her adult son, and I'm talking about older adult son, goes on into the park here, a residential program. He gets out a little bit earlier than everybody wished he had. Of course, that's real common. He goes into sober living, he, I get a call this morning from the guy who runs Sober Living, and they do IOP there and some other things also. And he says, this guy bailed last night on the meeting, went over to his mom's house, and she let him spend the night there. Okay. Now, last night, she was supposed to be in a family meeting, but she was not. I don't think. I don't run those meetings. I haven't checked with Rip yet. I've been at, but, and I really, this is a real call. What would you guys do with that case?
It makes it makes my brain go crazy. It's and I think I've said this before. The parents, if I said to them that it was curable and we're going to handle it and you can go do your life, they'd give over everything they had for it. But just showing up, doing the work themselves, it's incredibly difficult. And I guess I would share with that mother, it's like starting with, baby steps. Share with me one way that you have supported this program and your child.
Okay.
Yeah. Where do you start? Maybe it's baby steps for her.
Okay. All right. What about you, Kaylin? What and what I'm trying to get a feel for is in what you guys are involved with out there. What are you doing right now? And that's why I threw that case up. If that was your case, what would your program do?
I mean, I don't really know. I think that I don't really know. I honestly don't know. I honestly don't know what would motivate. And I think with what Pam said, like baby steps, and what came to mind right away was like, meeting them where they're at, right? Like meeting mom where she's at. And having somebody, I don't know. I honestly don't know. But and what else came to mind too is that so I have a participant who she's got access to me outside of APG. Like she has my phone number, and she texted me in the middle of the night. And I know this is not the same, but this is what came to mind when you were sharing the story. But
it's real. This is all.
But
this is what I want to do today.
But she texted me in the middle of the night. It was like 11:45 at night, and she was saying how and she's been struggling a little bit, but she shows up and she talks, and she's very smart and very articulate, and she goes to Mission High School, our recovery high school out here. She just does brilliantly when she's got the support, and then right before COVID happens, she has a slip up. She ends up in Desert Parkway, which is our local detox mental health hospital. The insurance will only take care of 10 sessions for her. So she has 10 days of PHP, IOP, and then is released. And so she comes back to APG. So now we're at this spot where she's back at home with her mom.
How old is she?
She's 15.
Okay.
She seems to be doing really well. She's showing up at APG. She's going back to school because she's also a runaway while this is happening, right? That's what she likes to do. She likes to run. So then she comes back to APG. We get her going on a routine. She starts to settle in again. She's doing well at school, but then she's at home. So she texts me at 11:45 at night. She's like, my mom is screaming at me. you know, she's accusing me of getting high, like just a lot of chaos in the home. And she's like,
Right.
you know, she's like, I'm not, whatever. And so, she's like, it got physical. My mom and I were fought each other. I called the cops. They're on their way. I'm hiding in the bathroom. If she finds out I'm on my phone, I'm going to get in trouble. So I'm like, well, you know, shit. Like, and I guess what just comes to mind is like, we have no power at what goes on at home behind closed doors. Right. And it's so unfortunate because I go, maybe, you know, my thing was like, okay, so let's talk about it a little bit over text. Like, you know, maybe you and your mom can come into APG and we can get you guys set up with some help, right? Like, let's get you guys into some family sessions, you know, where you guys can talk this out together with somebody who's qualified to process all this stuff with you guys. And she's like, I've already asked my mom so many times to go to counseling with me, and she says to me, you're the one with the problem, not me. And it's just like, what do you do with that? Like,
All right.
it's just a constant it's just backstepping.
Yeah.
It's almost like she has no chance.
Right. Well, she does. She has very little chance. Without the family's involvement, we do have the research on. The success rates drop almost 50%. Just on the family. Even if you have an APG, you know, for them, the young people to go to, and residential, without the family, it drops almost 50%. Okay. So do both groups have regular family meetings you're trying to get started or got started?
Yes, that's what we have. Once when COVID hit, it was a wrap. Like, everything just went to shit. Excuse my language. Like, but it really did. And so we're now trying to build up that momentum again without the support of Mission, which was like our number one. We had the back of Mission, so they were getting in contact with the parents. They were you know, it was a requirement to attend, you know, some
Have y'all
family
got
stuff
a
with
Zoom
Mission.
meeting going? Do y'all have Zoom meetings going?
No, we don't, but we're getting
Okay.
ready to start one up.
All right,
So
good. I will tell you that it really does help to have it, and we've got
yeah.
one. And when I deal with that mom in my example,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to be talking to her about, why weren't you in the meeting?
Right.
And I don't mean in a mean way. I'm going to exactly baby steps and go. I'm going to have to go over it with her over and over and over. What I need to work on here is building out more social elements into the Zoom world for the families. All right, but it is a nonstop deal. Y'all know different organizations. I'll put it this way: different APGs will actually put into writing what's expected of family members and have them sign it. You know, that they saw it and agree to take part. Depending on the financing, sometimes it'll be an issue of admission to the program or not. You know, without it, we're sorry. That, of course, will change according to the program needs and the needs of the individuals in the programs when you're trying to build them, what you got, what you don't have, etc. When we were talking about the conference coming up in a year that we're all now, you know, hopefully we'll be telling all of the families and the young people and the old people, everybody about. I want to tell you, historically, we had conferences as many as 8,000 people that were physically attended by the young people, the families, and everybody else. We quit having them because as the litigations, the culture became more litigation oriented, you know, and lawsuits became a more common issue. We couldn't gather that many people, young people, together without exposure legally that we just couldn't handle, you know. The cool thing again about the Zoom world is, guess what? We don't have to worry about after the sessions whether they go off and get pregnant in somebody's hotel room. Okay? We don't have to worry about that. But we still have to worry about the socialization elements, and how do we build that in? So this is something I'm telling y'all, remember that these are workshops that we have every once. They're not like what am I trying to say? They're not, I'm not giving a speech. I really want to hear ideas. We want these ideas to get spread around. We want them recorded so people can take part in them. One of the ideas that we have thrown around, and I actually have some staff management that I need to work harder at to get get some of these things placed. You really can. My family gets together every weekend, sometimes a couple times during the weekend, because again, I'm high risk on COVID, super high risk. I have an 89-year-old mother-in-law that's high risk. I have a 64-year-old brother-in-law that's also high risk. So we're in the midst of this pandemic where it's probably the worst in the country. And we're just having to say, well, what we do every weekend is we actually get online and do things like Jackbox games and have dinners together. We're all hanging out and talking. Well, I need to get that same thing going with the family group, that kind of thing. And it's one thing for me to talk. I've been talking about it. That's another thing I find we do. We talk about things and never quite get it done. I've actually got to do it because I've been talking about it for a little while. By the way, Kaylin, I want you to know that Pam and I are very, very sensitive to shitty language and stuff. I just want you to. Pam especially. God.
Terrible.
Man, what a potty mouth.
Coffee are never leaving, ever.
Yeah, so I have a problem with my mouth, and so we recently came up with the idea at APG where we made cuss jars. So, and we like decorated them, so they're like all blinged out. All the kids got to decorate their own because we're trying to change the culture, right, of the language around APG.
Yeah.
And so we have little pebbles that if you cuss or if you drop the F-bomb especially, we throw a pebble in the jar, and whoever has the most every day has to clean the bathroom. Ooh. And whoever has the least over the week gets an Amazon gift card.
Oh, wow.
So we're trying to build some incentive to, I have to clean the bathroom every day. Every day. It's bad, but I'm trying.
Well, this actually, you just handed me a great example to add on to mine of, I've been talking about getting this social thing going for a while. Now, there are things that I will get going. All right. There are things that I know I should get going and I can't quite get going. You can get the anti-cuss jar going, because that's for some reason I'll do stuff like that. But then there's some things that I have to make myself do, and I don't know why. Actually, I don't know why that is. When I get off of this phone, I'm going to call Rip and tell him, get the dang game thing going. Jeez. But it'll make a lot of difference. But that fun stuff is what will keep some families coming around. You not only have to have it, you have to make it a little bit fun somehow, or they will not come. They're a lot worse than people using. With my lady, when I get off this phone, I'm going to call her. I'm not going to wait for her to call. I'm going to call her, and I'm going to talk to her about, hey, these are the things we need to get going. That kind of. Actually, I'm going to call Rip first and find out if she's at the family meeting last night. I'm almost sure she was not, but we'll deal with it. And I'll give her what to do next to get the young man back where he is. Chances are very high that he used. The reason why I wanted to go to Mom's house is because he had something stashed there. That would be, I'd bet $1 million. But I already got the guy who's running and this is the case management of APG. I've already got the guy who is running the Sober Living Center ready to do a UA when the guy walks in. Not to kick him out, just to make sure it's all clean and everybody knows what's going on, I am betting a lot of money he's going to come up dirty, which is pretty tough. He may have to go back to residential, but if he comes up dirty, now the insurance companies have what they need to readmit. that kind of thing. But if you don't do it, they don't have it, and the game gets played out. Pam, you're on.
Yeah.
You know I was getting ready to call on you. You ran and clicked yourself off.
No, I last night we had our parent session, and just to change it up because the environment is so bizarre, I went and got picnic tablecloths, and we did the parent group outside, and I went and got Subway sandwiches just to make it fun, because it everything kind of feels awkward. And so they were able to sit outside in 60-degree weather. But it actually worked, because when the session was over, Donnie sent me a text and he said that was great. You know, because they were able to gather, and it felt more social than, you know, a parent session.
Yeah.
So just trying to think outside the box, because it's hard for the parents to show up.
What time what times are y'all's meetings?
On Tuesdays, it's 5:30, and then on Thursday, it's also it could be 5 o'clock, 5 or 5:30. We changed it when we started online, so
Right.
but they're about an hour and a half. And Tuesday, it's the parents are in one group and the kids are in another group. And then on Thursdays, it's multifamily, so everyone is together.
Yeah. What
So,
about
and
you, Kaylin?
So we don't have a scheduled meeting right now. The only thing that we have that's happening is we have one family equine session a month where we have the kids and the families doing the equine therapy together.
Okay.
And then right now I'm in the midst of like gathering information as far as like what time is going to be best, but we're looking at like Wednesdays or Thursday nights at 5:30. So
okay. Here's some things we learned. All right. And you actually fell on it anyway, Pam. If you have evening things around 5 or 5:30, have food.
Oh yeah.
Have some kind of food there. And I don't, it doesn't have to be a big deal, but have something that they can bite into and get their blood sugar back up, because otherwise they are grumpy, mean, angry. It's just is a hard night there, and it's for no reason. Y'all know that 5 o'clock is called the suicide hour, arsenic hour. More suicides occur at 5 o'clock in the evening than any other time of day, because people's blood sugar drops. Yeah, and
crazy.
So that depression that comes along with that, in addition to whatever else is going on with them, drives them in that point. So have something to eat. If you're going to do 5:30, have something to eat involved. If you're doing it Zoom, make it a fun thing. Let's see what you brought to eat. What are you going to eat? What are we going to watch you chew over the screen? That kind of thing. That's a real good
That's one of the ideas that a staff member came up with, actually, is having, like, because we do our family, in normal circumstances, we do our family dinner, right? So, which we have a real life chef from Vegas. I talked about it a lot at the conference, but it's a highlight of our program where we get a chef to come in and teach the kids how to make dinner for their families, and then they get to take it home, and we all sit down as a family together and have it. So I was thinking that, like, if we had dinner as a family, like all of us together as an APG family, even if it's over Zoom, like we're going to have a dinner. So bring your food, bring your, whatever it is. And directions like, set the table and, all of those kind of things to,
you can all bring your cuss jar too, have it.
Yeah. Yes.
You have to clean everybody's bathroom. No. That's a great jumping off point. A great springboard to what you're talking about, your culinary thing that worked
Mhm.
really, really well. Picking things that you already have going and working them into it is
Right.
obviously a really good idea, and that's a good one. As you were talking, I was thinking, what with the adults? Because see, my program is all to over 25-year-olds
Mhm.
and their families, and they're even harder in some ways. Well, he's a grown man, that's Texas, by the way. And it's a little bit more difficult to keep them involved until it's time to enable the 50-year-old. Then they'll get involved, not in
Right.
a good way.
So I have I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, John, but
No.
I before I forget, I have a question in regards to like who's the best person to like facilitate it? Is it a staff member from APG? Is it, important to get somebody who, has some letters behind their name who can facilitate it? I mean, what do you feel is most effective getting
Okay.
parents to talk?
Great question. All right. Here's and let's talk about what do you want to become? The perfect situation. All right.
Mm-hmm.
In the perfect APG group, there are 2 staff members. Okay. One is historically was called the senior counselor. The second one was called the counselor. Okay. The senior counselor's job, and you could change that to a director, the group director, if you want. He's the boss of that group. When I say group, I'm talking about a geographical area that's being served, geographical and an age area. Like there were younger groups in Fort Bend County. Okay. That was part of the bigger Houston program, but it was only one of 23 different groups. Okay. That younger group had had a senior counselor and a counselor. The senior counselor was somebody who could relate to parents better. All right. The counselor was somebody, and he was still cool, or she was still cool to the young people. All right. But not only did the young people, but also the parents thought he or she was cool too. Okay. The counselor, parents, he or she would do okay with them, but he was definitely cool with the young people. Okay. The adolescents. Each group, the family group and the young people group, both groups had something called a steering committee. There was the family steering committee and there was the younger group steering committee. There was one member in the family group that was called the parent coordinator. Okay. That was just a parent. Usually they had time, they'd been around a while, they'd, worked through a whole lot of stuff, but they were kind of your point person. The senior counselor worked with the parent steering committee primarily. Doesn't mean that the counselor couldn't come in and do something with the steering committee. When I say work with them, let me give you a monthly schedule. The steering committees, and there's a video available on steering committees. I believe we recorded that one. I think you can find it on the website. The steering committees were, let's say you have 40 people coming to a meeting, an APG meeting, 40 adolescents. Let's work with younger groups. It's the same in all 3 groups. So let's work with younger. You got 40 people. They range everywhere from I got 2 hours sober all the way to I got 2 years sober. Okay. Well, what you do is and in the other room, you got the family is coming, the families of these people. Usually there would be, if you had 40 young people, you might have 25, 30 parents in there. Okay. In each of those rooms are steering committees. 30 minutes before the meeting, the steering committees were met with. The senior counselor would meet with the parent steering committee first, and he would go over what are the meetings you're going to run tonight. Because with 25 people, you wouldn't put 25 people in one meeting. You'd put 8 people in 4 different meetings, 6 different meetings, 4 different meetings, 3 different meetings. I'm sorry, my math is all right. In 3 different meetings. And a steering committee member, one of the parents on the steering committee, would run each one of those meetings. The senior counselor, because he would know what's going on with the group in general, would know that there were certain topics that would be helpful to different parents in the group. One of the topics might be letting go and letting God. Another topic might be finding a sponsor. And a third topic might be, boundaries. When the parents all gathered together, the senior counselor would be there at the beginning of the parent meeting with the parent coordinator. And he'd go over quickly, any announcements and get things going kind of thing. Then he'd leave it and the parent coordinator would finish up and everybody would go to their 8-person meeting, whatever is. He might go to a parent or say, I really want you to go to the sponsorship meeting, finding a sponsor. He'll do that, get that happening. Then he would move over and catch the end of the adolescent meeting. He would walk around some during that time, but what would be going on while he was starting and helping the family meeting get going, the counselor over in the adolescent group would already have talked to the steering committee there and told them what 5 meetings are going to go on. There's 40 of them in there, so you're going to have about 5 meetings of 8 people. And he would have and the steering committee would have told some jokes, broken everybody up, made some announcements. He would have touched some folks that I'd really like for you to go to the sponsorship, this meeting, that kind of thing. And they would go in and they'd do it. The senior counselor might come over and might pull a person or 2 out to talk to them about something that might be going on. And then by the end of the meeting, he would not go back over and catch the end of the parent meeting. At the end of the meeting, he would stay in the adolescent group and make sure all the announcements got made, et cetera, et cetera. Then both groups would move towards coffee. And coffee would be some prearranged place, Now, this was before I'm talking about the perfect scenario where we're outside of the pandemic and all that. And they might all go over to IHOP, and then for the next hour, he's wandering around from table to table, just hanging out and talking to folks. Okay? Now, APGs in 1971 were the beginning of training and paying what now has become known as peer recovery counselors. Those 2 counselors, neither one of them they didn't have licensed chemical dependency counselors. Neither one of them were social workers or, LPCs or anything like that. So that particular element, they were all trained, and I mean trained hard, big time training, lots of training, but they were not the typical, remember this is 1971, so it was a very different view on licensing. So that is what, in my opinion, and what historically showed us was the best way to run the APG elements of an APG program. Now, an APG program is much bigger than that in some cases. It can have intensive outpatient group therapy sessions. It can have those family information, things I talked about. It can have a residential element. It can have sober living element. Each one of those will have different levels of credentialing involved. Obviously in a residential program, you're going to have a psychiatrist there. You're going to have, you're going to have a whole bunch of different credentials involved in that. But they're still plugged into those meetings. The meetings are the core, those APG meetings. Trying to think, I went over the perfect scenario, all right? Did it answer your question on who should be running what you're talking about right now?
I think so. I guess my follow-up question would be, because we're nowhere near a scale that you're talking about right there in the perfect scenario, right?
Right now.
Right. So when we're talking about, 5 to 10 parents and 5 to 10 kids
All right.
at a time.
When you have that, whoever is going to become your senior counselor,
Hmm.
okay, if you have somebody like this, they're the ones that you pick a parent, and that's your parent, your becoming parent coordinator.
Right.
One
Which is
parent.
what
You've
we're
done that
getting,
before.
like, yeah. And that's the idea that I talked to Joe about, is that finding a parent leader that could really kind of be the go-to person for the parents.
Right.
And then, so having that parent coordinator and then the senior staff member, those two people would run those groups.
Right. I would suggest if you have 10 parents, I would suggest you pick a second parent to begin your steering committee, maybe a third. All right.
Okay.
Because we're getting ready to leave the slowest referral point time of the year, pandemic aside. This is always the slowest time for referrals. All right.
Right.
You have several of them 6 weeks after school starts that you're going to have a whole bunch of people come in.
Hmm.
Then they'll die off as Thanksgiving comes along until about February 1st. Then it'll all happen again. January 15th is when it'll really begin. Summers are always very slow because it's real easy to hide and get away with stuff during the summer.
Right.
But go ahead and the reason why you want to pick two parents, one that you make the parent coordinator, you can do that, or just tell them both, hey, you're steering committee. I need steering committee. And but that way, if one of them is sick and can't do it, the other one can. You know, you're covered on getting the meetings started, et cetera. What we're doing right now is every Tuesday morning, my staff member, Rip, he will send out the Zoom invitations. There'll be one to the family members and one to the people, you know, the users. Okay. On Tuesday nights at 6:30, he will move from one meeting to another. Okay. He'll start off with Susan, and we have two parents that are basically the beginning of the steering committee on the family side, and he'll start off with them, make sure he knows what they're doing, make sure he knows what meeting they're going to run, etc. In some cases, in fact, last night was one of them, he will actually go into the meeting and he might talk about some concept or something that the group as a whole needs to do. He's not a parent, so he can't run the parent meeting, but he
Right.
is the facilitator, and he can go in and talk about concepts and those kinds of things. And then he'll leave it, he'll move over to the users meeting and might do the same thing on the user side that he's already begun to build with two steering committee members. And we're starting to get more people coming in. I talked to you about one of the cases this morning, you know,
Hmm.
that is doing.
Are these, can I ask, are these parents that are currently in the program?
Yes.
And then do you just identify?
Oh, wait, let me change that because it'll answer, I think, where you're going. One of them, of the two steering committees, is somebody I called and asked to take part that's from history to help us out.
So that could be someone who's just graduated.
Yes.
And then do they participate in these meetings?
They actually help run them. Yeah. I have two steering committee members in the family group. And the reason is if Susan and I said her name a second ago, Susan and the other lady. If Susan gets sick, the other lady can do it. If the other lady is sick, Susan is there. If they're both there, great. Now they got, extra input going on. And actually in the users group, I have one also that is an invite that has years and years of recovery under their belt,
And they just come back weekly?
Yeah, they come and help. They come and be there because it's a good meeting. They like the meetings, most of them, and let's see. Did that answer your question, Kaylin?
Yes.
Okay, good. We're out of time. I talked y'all to death again. I'm sorry. I ramble. I apologize, but I do. I can't help. I get excited and I think about it.
You're a plethora of information, John.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
all good.
All right. Do y'all think that we should have these every week or every other week?
I'm game for either one. So I don't mind. I mean, I don't know about anybody else, but I don't have that much going on right now
You can't step
as
out.
far as like, yeah. So, I mean,
I always think it's easier to be in a routine, just mentally knowing it's
Okay.
weekly.
All right, we'll just
Yeah.
keep it going weekly then. And
Okay.
I will see y'all next week. Thank you so much. I love
thank
you guys.
you so much.
You know the
Love you
phone's
too.
always here. Don't hesitate to call. It's no big deal.
Yes, thank you.
All right.
And
Love you
happy early birthday, Pam.
Oh, yeah,
I'll call
wait.
you on Monday, but
Let's sing to her. Happy
happy
birthday
birthday
to
to
you.
you.
Happy birthday. Let's
Happy
sing really bad. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday,
birthday, dear
Happy
Pam.
birthday to
To
you.
you.
Thank you.
All the monkeys in the zoo, and they have quite a few. Well, you look like a monkey and you smell like one too.
Yep. Thank you.
I love you
Awesome.
guys.
Bye.
Happy birthday.